Inevitable enlightenment. Information about the nature of reality and our place in the universe is constantly expanding and evolving. This inevitable enlightenment presentation explores some contributing factors to the apparently cyclical rise and fall of civilizations on Earth. It draws on ancient and recent history, scientific and spiritual perspectives, and it points to our species' probable enlightened future. Welcome, and thank you for taking an interest. Human physiology, the Earth, the starry heavens, and the rise and fall of civilizations are all interconnected. Electromagnetic energies radiating toward us from the trillions of suns and stars influence us in many ways. We know this at a deep level, and that's why the Mayan calendar has captured our attention recently. Here's a humorous take on the Mayan calendar. The Mayan calendar's end date is actually based on astronomical calculations, including some alignments in the Milky Way galaxy, which ancient scientists believed would greatly affect us. Billions of suns in the Milky Way, including ours, rotate, orbit, and revolve around one another constantly, moving in and out of various alignments. This view highlights the enormous Sagittarius A star at the galactic center. Our own sun is just one of billions of tiny dots of light here, and Earth doesn't even register. Two significant solar alignments in the Milky Way peak in December 2012. Alcyone, the central sun for our solar system and a few others, Sirius, the greater central sun, and Sagittarius A star, the Milky Way's central sun, form an equilateral triangle in space. And at the same time, our sun and our whole solar system are in direct alignment with the galactic equator. Both of these alignments unleash new kinds of subtle energies toward Earth. December 2012 is, or was, depending on when you're watching this, the midpoint or the apex of these alignments. They've already been affecting us for about 40 years, and even though we're mostly unaware of the effects on a daily basis, the steady cycles of suns and stars over the millennia influence our civilization on Earth. If you're awake these days, it's impossible not to notice that our civilization is in big trouble. If it's the kind of trouble that makes money, solutions may not be found. But ordinary people with common sense are demanding solutions. Many agree with the ancient Mayans that it's time for our current reality to end. It's an unsustainable structure, a flawed model. People all over the world are feeling inspired to take power into their own hands. This grand global awakening is actually an indicator that powerful electromagnetic energies are reaching us and waking us up. Our time has been predicted in many ancient traditions, not just by the Mayans, to be a momentous turning point. And we're not the first civilization on Earth to be in big trouble. Arnold Toynbee, a British historian, is the author of A Study of History, a 12-volume analysis of the rise and fall of civilizations. Here's a graph showing Toynbee's model of the rise and fall patterns of the major civilizations around the Mediterranean over the last 5,000 years. Toynbee theorized that a new civilization begins in response to a great challenge, for example, the need to grow more food. The civilization rises, building up momentum as it successfully meets its great challenge, but in the process, it creates a new challenge for itself. Perhaps in growing more food, it created chemical fertilizers that poisoned the soil. So the civilization peaks and then heads downhill. In these declining civilizations, it's not that nobody knows how to address the new challenge. Creative solutions arise, but the solutions challenge the established order. Those in power are unwilling to relinquish control. Big oil suppresses clean energy technologies. Big pharma suppresses natural cures. Big media suppresses the truth, and so on. The existing power holders, their governance structures, institutions, and worldview are either unable or unwilling to solve the crisis. The result is a civilization in collapse. as we saw in Toynbee's model. I found Toynbee's rise and fall graph in The Turning Point, a book by physicist and systems theorist and teacher Fritjof Capra. Capra says what's unique about our time in history and different from the civilizations charted on Toynbee's graph is that we now have only one global civilization. So economies and ecosystems all over the world are integrated and are all crashing at the same time. In The Turning Point, Capra says the current crisis is not just a crisis of individuals, governments, or social institutions. It is a transition of planetary dimensions. As a civilization and as a planetary ecosystem, we're reaching the turning point. Capra says the three key transitions of our current global crisis are the decline of patriarchy, the end of fossil fuels, and a paradigm shift. Patriarchy has led at least 3,000 years of philosophical, social, and political systems in which men determine the role of women on this planet. The end of fossil fuels doesn't mean we've run out of fossil fuels, of course, but that we're finally awake to the environmental damage caused by the fossil fuel industry. This graph tells the story. The current industrial era spawned by fossil fuels is just a brief blip in history compared to Egyptian and Greek civilizations. And the third key transition is what's called a paradigm shift, referring to the changing thoughts, perceptions, and values that form our worldview, or our way of making sense of reality. Some examples of our old worldview are a belief that the scientific method is the best approach to knowledge. It got us out of the Dark Ages, but it's limited in assessing the whole of reality. And a belief that life is a competitive struggle, and a belief that expects never-ending material, economic, and technological growth. Eminent Harvard sociologist Patiram Sorokin predicted in 1937 the paradigm shift and social upheavals we're experiencing now. Sorokin's analysis very forcefully suggests that the crisis we're facing today is no ordinary crisis, but one of the great transition phases of human history. Other academics have reached the same conclusion. According to renowned historian Lewis Mumford, there may have been fewer than a half a dozen of these profound cultural transformations in the entire history of Western civilization. Mumford rates our current global transition as equal to the rise of civilization with the invention of agriculture at the beginning of the Neolithic epoch, the rise of Christianity at the fall of the Roman Empire, and the transition from the Middle Ages to the Scientific Age, from the 16th to the 18th centuries. So this is big. Along with Capra, Sorokin, Mumford, and other respected thinkers, many ancient authors have predicted this momentous transition. Hebrew, Mayan, Egyptian, and Hindu texts all record our time in history as a time of momentous change. What does momentous change mean? Apparently, evolution is full of momentous changes. Here's the evolutionary spiral developed by French philosopher and paleontologist Teilhard de Chardin, introduced in his 1955 book, The Phenomenon of Man. Chardin called this the Great Spiral of Life, 13.7 billion years of slow, plodding, incremental changes, from the creation of galaxies and solar systems through subatomic particles, single-celled organisms, varying planetary biosystems, to mammals, primates, and to humans, on the top right, on a relatively recent turn of the spiral. It looks like a pretty smooth and steady climb. But futurist Barbara Marx Hubbard, widely regarded as the philosophical heir to distinguished American systems theorist, architect, author, engineer, and designer Buckminster Fuller, believes that evolution is not as smooth and predictable as this spiral would suggest. Hubbard says evolution is neither consistently incremental nor linear. She says there are breaks in the spiral where evolution takes a quantum leap to something radically new and different. Hubbard cites the work of Nobel Prize-winning chemist Ilya Prigogine, who found that most of reality, instead of being orderly, stable, and equilibrial, is actually seething and bubbling with change, disorder, and process. Prigogine determined that a chaotic, dysfunctional system will eventually self-organize into a new, more complex system with a higher degree of order. Hubbard says Prigogine's conclusion applies to our world today. From an evolutionary perspective, turmoil, crisis, and chaos can be interpreted as aspects of transformation, evolutionary drivers, because although every system in our world is breaking down, the crisis we're facing is also causing innovations and breakthrough solutions. The new civilization is always gearing up at the same time the old one lurches toward collapse. There's never a void. So, our civilization is chaotic and dysfunctional. We'd probably all agree with that. Where should we quantum leap to? Some foresee a high-tech future with more electronics and robots. Some think we should return to an agrarian culture. And many see no option but to continue working like slaves in a global corporatocracy run by men in suits. These are all logical predictions based on where we are now, but none of these futures signifies a quantum transformation, which is, by definition, unexpected. A quantum transformation is a leap from one state to another without traversing the distance in between. It doesn't arise in a linear pattern. A quantum transformation appears unrelated to what has come before. So what might come next? Futurist Barbara Marx Hubbard believes we humans today are a transitional species, about to leap from Homo sapiens to Homo universalis, a new evolutionary stage of human development characterized by heightened mental, spiritual, and creative capacities and power. According to Hubbard, we've reached dawn in a new evolutionary era. She agrees with many ancient traditions that humanity is emerging from a long period of limited awareness. Even though we're technologically advanced, a new understanding of our inner essence, our place and purpose in the natural world, is dawning. Are there any measurable scientific indicators of an impending transition? Any signs that we're approaching some kind of quantum leap? Yes, there are some unusual indicators. First, scientists say Earth's magnetic field is declining fast, and ancient scientific Hindu texts say we're ending an epoch, a 52,000-year astronomical cycle. And third, NASA says we're being flooded with new electromagnetic energies from outer space. We'll explore each of these in more detail in the next part of this presentation.